Hey guys, I'm bringing you another deck profile today. Bit different from the last couple that I've put up. This is obviously not my normal setup. I don't have a camera and I don't have real cards in front of you, and I am very, very apologetic for that. But I just am not in a position where I am able to purchase some of the cards that I am missing from this deck, and there are just so many that there's really not much of a point of me uploading the deck list in the condition that the deck is in for me right now. So I'm going to briefly go over what it is that you need for this deck. This is obviously a build without the new support cards. If you want to run those, you go right ahead. All you need are two of the new main deck monster and one of the new fusion, and find room for that in the deck if you want to play this online. But as for real life, if you wanted to take this to a locals or something, this is the deck that I would recommend you run. Just follow along, play this. I'll show you why I've made certain decisions over other ones, and we'll go over that as we go along. So with all that said, let's just get right into the stuff. So for every good pure Shaddol deck, you want two of each main deck Shaddol minus the Zephyrs and Hound. These are the good ones, run these. You only need to run two of each because, this deck has a lot of searching. It's got Beast for draw power, it's got Hedgehog, it's got Construct to pitch stuff. It's got really everything you need, so you only really need two of each card. Plus, you also are dependent on the other attributes to make your fusions, so you really want to be able to see those often as well. So two of each is pretty good. Each one of these has a very good niche application. Shaddoll Beast obviously is a draw. Dragon, he's a one-card penguin soldier in the worst-case scenario, but he can out-back row. That's problematic if your opponent's running back row. Squamata, if this is the card in your hand, it'll get to whatever Shaddoll monster you need, or it's got a really funky combo with Construct and Shaddoll Core, which I'll get into when we talk about Shaddoll Core. Shaddoll Hedgehog is your searcher. On flip, he searches a spell. On destruction, on being sent to the graveyard, he searches a monster, so he's just a no-brainer. Heck, you could run him at 3 and it would probably be fine. And then Falco is an extra body on board. Sometimes you just need to get to that extra Shaddoll for another fusion summon, or on the off chance that you really need to get a Shaddoll out of your graveyard, his flip effect will do that for you too. So that is it for the Shaddol monsters. For our light monsters, we run two Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning. Dropping this card on people is really fun. You could run 3 of it if you can find room for it. I just can't find the room for it. And, sometimes if you draw into it but none of your fusions, then he's kind of dead in your hand. So, having 2 of him is perfectly fine. You could cut him if you wanted to. He's really not all that necessary, but I think he's really fun to play, so I play him at 2. Then you have 2 Trick Clown and 2 Damage Juggler. The Trick Clown being sent to the graveyard is another body, so you can make link plays if you have to. He's here to act as another body, is really what it comes down to. That's why he's in the deck. And then you have 2 Damage Juggler to either search out your Trick Clowns if you need to fusion summon from hand, or just to act as a hand trap itself to stop some damage. If you are about to die, he'll go to the graveyard, and then you can banish it to summon BLS or something, or if you send Trick Clown, you can summon it instead. Who knows? But I prefer the Performage, the Trick Clowns. If you prefer hand traps, I would honestly recommend you run Effect Veiler over Ghost Ogre. Why do I say that? Effect Veiler is a spellcaster, and there are a lot of spellcasters in this deck. The Trick Clowns are spellcasters, that's why I've got them in here. All of your Shaddolls are spellcasters, so is Mathematician, who we'll get into here in a second. So you have a lot of spellcasters, and running more spellcasters has some synergy with the deck, especially with the limited number of link monsters that we have access to. Mathematician, he'll pitch a Shaddoll to your deck. This can get you started. He'll be a good normal summon no matter what, and he is typically the normal summon you want to summon, because he can either send a Trick Clown, which you can use for a link play, he can send any of your Shaddolls, which you can use to summon, or he can just he'll put something useful in the graveyard every time you normal summon. That's not a problem. And then we've got 3 Ash, which is not only a fire monster, but a hand trap, which is always nice. She's just a solid card to have in really any deck. And we run Grista, so having a fire monster of our own is always a good thing. Onto our spell cards, we of course run 3 Shaddoll fusion, and 3 El Shaddoll fusion. These are your archetypal fusion monsters. El Shaddoll fusion lets you use materials from deck if your opponent controls a extra deck monster that was summoned from the extra deck. You have to remember that. And El Shaddoll Fusion is a quick play fusion spell, which will always be good and always be runnable. I do recommend that this is the ratio you run. Try not to cut any of these fusions. They are searchable. There is a really janky way you can get to it, and I'll go over that in a minute. But really, you want to see these in your hand because that'll open up more plays if you have them already in your hand and don't have to search for them. Of course, 3 Super Polymerization. Super Poly, you're running a deck based around fusing your main deck monsters with random attributes. This card will outboards, especially against, Thunder Dragon. You can drop this, get rid of their Colossus to summon Winda, or you could drop it to get rid of their Titan to summon Construct. It really doesn't matter. And we run Grista for Salad Boys, we run Shek and all these other cards that are really good, plus a couple of other generic cards in case you need to out 2 monsters like Mud Dragon or Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. All in all, solid card in every fusion deck that just has generic fusions, and it's no different for Shaddolls. As for instant fusion, we run 2 of it. You do have a bunch of targets. You have 4. You've got 2 Winda, and your best one is, of course, Thousand Eyes Restrict, which can take one of your opponent's monsters without destroying it, which is always nice. It'll get rid of a problem or force your opponent to deal with something that they don't really want to deal with. Just a solid card. You could up this to 3 by dropping something, probably the Blackluster Soldiers, but I think it's fine at 2. Allure of Darkness is your draw power card. I'm running Allure of Darkness over main decking Spell and Trap support, just because I don't feel like maining Spell and Trap support when we have Dragon is all that necessary. So we have 3 Allure of Darkness. You do have 10 Dark Monsters. Try not to activate this unless you have one in your hand, obviously, but it'll get you there. And as for extra draw power card Destruction, which will trigger the effects of your Shaddoll monsters. So if you card Destruction and draw a bunch of new cards, you'll have Shaddoll monsters in your graveyard that'll activate, get you more stuff, which is never a bad thing. Foolish Burial to trigger a Shaddoll monster or a Perform Mage or something like that, generic. Monster Reborn, you know what that does. Now, as for the 1 core, there is a combo you can do where if your opponent controls a monster special summon from the extra deck, you can use Shaddoll Fusion, sending one of your light monsters and Squamata to the graveyard to summon Construct. Construct and Squamata send 2 Shaddoll cards. They're not monsters, they can be any of the cards. So then you send core, and you send fusion, and then the core adds the fusion. So now you have another fusion to perform another fusion summon, which can help you either extend for game or come back in case something happens to your construct. That's another reason we run Trick Clown, is because Trick Clown can chain block your Shaddolls from getting negated. So if you don't need the body, you still slap him on the end of your chain just so that you can prevent anything bad from happening to your Shaddoll monsters. So that's why you would want to send Squamata and Trick Clown, because he will chain block the 2 of them. But that is it for the main deck. That's what I think you should run. This is a very staple, very cookie cutter Shaddoll main deck build. It's really the extra deck where decisions are made and things like that. So we'll get into that here right now. For our extra deck, we do have 2 Shekanaga. We don't have a lot of Earth targets, but Shekanaga has a big butt and a negate, which is never a bad thing to have, and sometimes that's just what you need to have on the board over Construct. So running 2 of her is fine. You could cut one of her or one of the Windas to run Anoyatilis, but Anoyatilis is a $30 card, and because you're not main decking a water monster, you have to rely on core to make it, or your opponent running Marincesses or some other water archetype, which you don't have the luxury to do that. You could also do it with Mud Dragon of the Swamp. There are a lot of ways you could do it, but they are niche and very far and few between. Side it, obviously, because someone might be running Marincess and you want to out their stuff. That's cool, but it's just $30, make smart decisions, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, 3 Construct, this is the boss monster. This is kind of a play extender. You just run 3 of it. Pitches a Shaddoll card from your deck to your graveyard to activate its effect or do the thing with core. but it also will destroy a monster at battles if it was special summoned before damage calculation. So it's non-targeting removal, which is never bad. The one Grista, because we have a fire monster, and sometimes this is just the only card we can make, once per turn, discard a Shaddoll card, negate a special summon. That's not horrible. That's pretty decent. And because of how it's worded, you do get the Shaddolls effect. It's not cost to discard. Same with Shekinah. If you discard to get your negates, you will in fact get your Shaddolls effect to activate. And then, of course, Winda, one of the best floodgates for the deck. Neither player can special summon more than once a turn, so your opponent has to use resources to out the Winda or the construct. They have to make decisions, and forcing your opponent to make decisions is what you really need to do in Yu-Gi-Oh! And any card game you play. Now, as for other fusion targets, we have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon for Super Poly. There are a lot of dark cards running around. You can use that to out summon one of your Shaddolls, Super Poly it into Starving Venom, just in case you don't want to make Winda, but you can also fuse two of your opponent's dark monsters into it, so it's always a good thing to have. Mud Dragon of the Swamp is here for the same reason. Two monsters, the same attribute. Let's say they're running Salads and they got two fire monsters you don't want to worry about. Super Poly them away into Mud Dragon. Boom, you're done. Turn Mud Dragon into another attribute. Fuse the Mud Dragon away into something useful, which is always a good thing. And then Thousand Eyes Restricted to get rid of other problems, because non-destruction removal is just as good as non-targeting removal. As for our Link monsters, a Boral Sword Dragon to go in for game, because Boral Sword Dragon is the card that makes every deck able to OTK, so it might as well make our deck able to OTK even harder. Sometimes you go into a construct and then you have enough cards left over to make him and you win, just because Boral Sword is there to kill your opponent. Then we just have a couple of Link 2s, a Beat Cop, because it's the best generic Link 2 for this deck. One Shaddoll construct. You might not ever make this card, but it is very useful if you can make it. So if by some grace you do in fact get two Shaddolls on the field face up, make a construct, and then fuse it away because it can recur itself. It can fuse with itself without a spell. It can recur itself by sending a Shaddoll card from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard, which will trigger the Shaddoll monster you sense effect, and then it'll give you two really good arrows when you summon it to that main monster zone. So Construct, just a good card for the deck in general. And then I chose Daybreaker because we have a lot of spellcasters. Are you going to really make use of its effects? Maybe, but he's just got good arrows and he's easy to summon in the deck, so we threw him in there. You could run Lambda instead. There are cards that'll be coming out in the TCG like Cloth Heap and eventually Anaconda, which you'll want to replace some of the cards in your extra deck with. But until that time comes, Daybreaker is perfectly fine to hold that line for you. But that is it for the deck list. This is my opinion on Shaddolls. This is what I think you guys got to run. That's all I've got for today's video. I will see you all in the next one. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, notification bell, Twitter, every other button you can find. Go ahead and push it for me. It really helps a lot, and we really appreciate it here. So thank you all for that. I will see you in the next video. Adios.